For this video, we'll engage in the act of exploitation using previously discovered vulnerabilities, specifically for the Linux operating system. There'll be additional tutorial for leveraging the same practice for the Windows target. If we look into the actual objectives, we'll leverage an automated vulnerability matching tool. The same tool will help us find applicable exploits that have been published previously. And then using these exploits, we're going to attempt to compromise the target system of evaluation. Once exploited, the target system will engage in the practice of interacting with the remote system and engage in a post-exploitation. As part of the post-exploitation, we will obtain the system password hashes and then crack them using offline password cracker and the name of John the Ripper. So the actual nature of the assignment requires you to use Kali as the attacker and our Linux target. The exploitation activities again need to be performed against the Linux and Windows target. The first step of the process will be to export or to point to the previously exported reports from Nmap, OpenVAS, and Nessus. So once we import the results into the Metasploit tool, Metasploit is an automation framework for the entire process of discovering the vulnerability from a previously discovered vulnerability scanner. We're going to import the results into this tool and then use the tool to match the exploit, engage in communication with the target and post-exploitation. So the same framework will help us automate these different tasks. The framework is called Metasploit, and there's different ways to navigate it. We are going to primarily use the graphical user interface method and the community-based Armitage front end. So once we've imported the different results, we launch the exploitation activity. What we need to do is come back to our table from the previous assignment and update some results. Notice there'll be two new categories, two new columns. They're the exploit and the exploit success. So in the previous assignment, we had the target, the scanner that has been used, open ports, running services, vulnerability, summary, etc. And then we need to add the actual exploit. An example of exploit is here. So if there is a publicly available exploit, it's going to be listed as an exploit Linux FTP. This is the reference where we found the exploit. Which exploit is it that we actually attempted? And then the last column is the actual success of the exploit, whether or not it was successful to give us a shell or it wasn't. We're providing an example here, and the next step is going to be to actually record screenshots. Screenshots are requested for each major activity. Specifically, we're asking for a full screenshot of each exploit that was successful and a screenshot of the cracked passwords for Linux and Windows. So every exploit that you have a successful shell that we cover, we expect you to have a screenshot. The screenshot needs to be complemented with a brief description of what is it that you attempted. Was this a VNC exploit? Was this successful? What are the results? And so on. So screenshots complete a table with results. And what I'm expecting you to have is, let's say you have 20 vulnerabilities. I expect you to validate all 20 of these vulnerabilities. If there is a vulnerability on the list, because you only focused on high-end criticals, then what you need to do is append the exploit column and whether or not it was successful, the information on this side may be blank. So you're welcome to go in, look through the OpenVAS and Nessus report and fill in the blank. But for the sake of time, I will accept if you only list the exploit here. Now, in a true pen test, you need to be thorough. You need to make sure you cover all low, medium, high, and critical, because this can be overwhelming for first-time learners who are taking the subject matter. We decided to narrow down the scope of the vulnerabilities to high and critical. So let's get into the actual hands-on assignment. Again, you need to sign in to your virtual lab using the provided credentials. And the first thing we need to do is actually need to make sure that we can talk to our target. So check the IP configuration for your Kali. Check the IP configuration for your Linux and Windows. And make sure that from your Kali, you can talk to your Metasploitable target. So if you're getting this, we're good to go. So the next step is to start Armitage. Now in Armitage, what we need to do is first open up a terminal. Once we open up the terminal, we need to initialize the database for the Metasploit framework. This is done by the msfdb space init command. And then the next thing we need to do is we need to start the database service. So service space PostgreSQL start, and that will initiate the database. The following command is the Armitage, which is the graphical user interface for the Metasploit framework. We hit enter, and this will, if everything is working properly, bring in this window. And this is the connection. Click connect, yes, to start the RPC service. And this will initiate the actual Armitage GUI for the Metasploit framework. Now, what you should see here is that I have a number of reports that are already saved. So I'm going to rename this one. So what I have is the Nessus with .nessus, the OpenVAS with .nbe, and nmap report. And where are you gonna get those? Well, you need to be in Nessus, go into your scan, and again, the IP addresses are gonna vary from my simulation environment to your environment. You need to substitute the IP addresses from what you see here to what is in your own environment. So we need to come into the actual scan and then go into and export. Left click on the Nessus format. Then you need to tell where to save this particular file, and that's going to be the report of the previously conducted scan. And I put it on the desktop for ease of finding it. This is the desktop of your Kali virtual machine. So the same thing for your OpenVAS. You need to come in and let's see if I have it. Looks like I don't. Log into your OpenVAS installation with the provided username and password, and then go into your scan. Look into the task that you executed. Okay, and look into, let's see, target. It looks like I clicked on the wrong place. So click on the report. And this could be working a little slow because I have several things happening at the same time. Let's stop the Nessus service to free up some resources. Okay, so in here, you're going to open up the latest scan that you've done. And eventually this will pull up, and then from the list here, I need to select the NBE format. You click on the down arrow, and then save it to a location. I put it on my desktop with the name OpenVAS, my first and last name, openvas.nbe, and this should be a step from your previous assignment. Once you have those, you should be in a good shape. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop OpenVAS so that I'm not eating up additional memory resources and processing power from Armitage. I don't want it to crash for lack of adequate resources. So once Armitage is up, it's going to look like this. And Armitage is organized in menu driven. So on the left hand side we have the different modules. The auxiliary, those are scanners. Exploit is the actual exploits that take advantage of particular vulnerability. The payload is how we interact with the target. And this is either programmed to either for the target to phone home once exploited, or for us to directly bind to the target if an exploit is successful. And then we have the post-exploitation modules, which are privilege escalation, password cracking, and similar. So in order to navigate through the menu, we can type in a word like telnet. And from telnet, we're given different available modules. So for the auxiliary, there's different login scanners. For the exploits, based on the operating system, we have a number of exploits. So we know this is a Linux. If a particular version of Linux is running, we can run through those. And then for Windows, and then the payload is how we interact. So using the exploit, what is the communication channel that we can use to converse with the remote target. And then in here we have the console, which is giving us different options. So if you type in the word help, we're given information about the different commands that are available and a brief description. So you'll be using this from time to time. The other interesting areas are, you can see here, the console. So if you close this window, you can come into view and click on console, and it's going to open up another console window. The jobs or whatever is happening, script console, if you're trying to kind of save a number of commands and coming back and re-execute them. And then the reporting is anything that you've executed within the console. So for Armitage, this is a new connection. If you connect to a remote Armitage of a colleague, and this helps with the teaming and the exploitation process. For the hosts, you can import. This is where we're going to actually go in and import our hosts. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to click import, and this will import the results from our pre-saved Nmap and Nessus results. Now, one thing I need to caution you is one of my scans, I think it was for, I want to say OpenVAS, is from a target with different IP address. So that's not going to work, but again, the proof of concept will be there. So what we're going to do is import my Nmap. And if it's successful import, it's going to look like this. And with the successful import, what I should actually get is a new target. So I need to remove this one. And then I'm going to go into import my Nessus. And it looks like maybe my import of Nmap was not successful. Let's make sure Nmap desktop. Can try the .nmap. Typically it's the XML file. Yeah, it's not going to take this type. Let's see, import, and it was desktop XML. Okay. And then the last one is do the same thing for the OpenVAS. Again, if I do the OpenVAS for me, I believe the different IP scheme, so it will not be relevant for this particular example. Now, if you don't import the OpenVAS, you're going to have less number of vulnerabilities that you can search through. So if I go in here, just for the proof of concept, it's going to import, obviously it's a different IP address, it's going to show it as a different target. What we can do here is once things are imported, and again, because your target is the same IP address and shouldn't have changed, you should see all these results applied against the same IP address. So once things are imported, what we can do is look into a list with available vulnerabilities. So we can leverage the built-in console menu and type in vulns. Oh, actually, not in the import menu, in the console. And look, there's a big list of vulnerabilities, and this is for all the different targets that we have. So let's say that I'd like to find out vulnerability for a particular, service. Let's say that I'm looking for vulnerability. Capital R is for, let's see, our 192.168.182.131 system. I'm looking for a service. This is capital S called VSFTPD. And it gives me, different matches, but obviously this is not very descriptive. It's kind of hard to see, right? So with the dash capital S, I'm doing a search for VSFTPD. Dash capital R, I'm looking for a particular host. If I didn't specify the host, it's going to look for results within all imported IP addresses. Now, let's say that I would like to do the same command with a little more descriptor. So I'm using the dash I. So with the dash I, now I'm looking into a bit more of a human readable content for the particular vulnerability. Now I see that for this is where I executed the command. It tells me, now look at this, it tells me that it's prone to a backdoor vulnerability. The solution is this, and this is the result actually from OpenVAS. So Metasploit itself cannot do a vulnerability scan, but we're bridging the ability of Metasploit to exploit the vulnerability by bringing the vulnerability from a vulnerability scanner. So in here it tells me that it's backdoor vulnerability. Okay. So can I do the same thing from here? VSFTPD. So if I look into this, I find that there is a matching exploit. Now what I need to do to launch the exploit is make sure I double click on it. I can specify the localhost, the local port doesn't matter, the target, which is automatically populated, because remember, we looked into the results for these. Once we import the results, we're going to automatically see if there's a matching exploit. These are pre-populated. Now, if this is incorrect, you double click and specify the correct IP address. The only thing left is to click launch. Please remember that once you exploit a vulnerability, you may be given only one chance. You may not re-exploit certain vulnerabilities time and time again. The service will crash. What you have to do is restart the system. So now that we have imported the different vulnerability scan reports, we're going to go into a different section of actually launching exploits.